museum we're in today is what remains of the first rail yard in the state of Georgia. And it was built by the state's most successful railroad company, the Central of Georgia Railway. The Central of Georgia was founded in 1833 by William Washington Gordon. He was a former mayor of the city and grandfather of Juliet Gordon Lowe, the founder of the Girl Scouts. And even before there was a rail yard here, this ground was important because, believe it or not, we're also on top of a battlefield from the American Revolution. On this ground, on October 9th, 1779, at 5 o'clock in the morning, the second bloodiest battle in the Revolution took place here. The Battle of Savannah only lasted 55 minutes. And at battle's end, the count of casualties stated that the combined American and French losses equaled at least 800 soldiers, whereas the British only lost around 50. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the Battle of Savannah, right outside the museum is our Memorial Park, which commemorates the battle and the soldiers that fell on that field that day. And across the street, the History Museum has an extensive exhibit about the war in general and the battle in particular. And that exhibit is actually in the process of expanding at the moment, as we are preparing to welcome 17 Revolutionary War-era cannons into the museum that were found at the bottom of the Savannah River 5 years ago. And what's important about the battle for this tour is it was more than just the French and the Americans fighting the British here. Please keep all body parts inside the train. Alongside the French came auxiliary troops that were from parts of the world that we would call today the countries of Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Ireland, Sweden, Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Germany, Poland, and Lithuania. And we're all here to help us try and reclaim the city. Now, decades after the Battle of Savannah took place, on the ground where the worst of the fighting happened, the Central of Georgia acquired 25 acres of land, stretching from Turner Street, where the glass tower is on our right, to Jones Street, the road on the other side of our facility on my left. It took 20 years to build this rail yard from 1835 to 1855. And at the same time, the Central of Georgia was also building 200 miles of railroad track to connect Savannah to the city of Macon to our northwest. Now, in just a couple of moments, we are going to roll onto our turntable. Now, our turntable has been here for 103 years now, and is one of 16 historic functioning turntables left in the United States. It's 85 feet long, all powered by electricity, and has been here now for 103 years. It's also the fourth turntable that this place has ever had. Now, that original turntable was so well balanced that with a train on it, you only needed one man on each end to spin it. But in just a moment, this train will have around 70 tons of train on it, and it will spin us using 2 electric engines that are 7 horsepower each. Meaning, right now at Home Depot, there are lawnmowers with more horsepower than what's going to spin us in just a moment. Now, once Adam gets in the booth and we start to spin, this becomes the most dangerous part of the ride. Because if you look at the rim, there's nothing connecting the tracks outside to the tracks we're on right now. If those rails are out of position by less than an inch when we leave this platform, there's a pretty good chance the train will jump off the rails and then the train ride will have to end. The only thing stopping that from happening now is Adam. He is our only hope. And thankfully, he is very good at his job. During his training, he learned an ancient, mysterious art called eyeballing it, which allows him to know where the rails are at all times. And with his 1 year of experience, it hasn't failed us yet. Now, alongside talking about the history of the railroad, we also repair and restore train cars here at the museum. And one of our current projects is this silver train car right behind us. This is the 374. This car was here in the 1950s, connected to the Nancy Hanks, at that time the fastest passenger train in the country. The Nancy Hanks ran from Savannah to Atlanta every single day, crossing over 300 miles in under 6 hours. And this car has been the project of one of our engineers for the last 24 months, fixing it inside and out, getting it ready for public display. But that is one project in the smaller of our two workshops. In just a moment, once the rails are realigned, we're going to head down to the far end of our yard and go into the paint shop and see where the rest of our work is done here in the museum. Now, our paint shop is one of our youngest buildings. It was constructed in 1925, 101 years ago, and it was built during a time when this place was at its busiest. If we were here 100 years ago in the 1920s, we would see up to 1,000 people working this yard in 8 to 12-hour shifts every single day. In general, working for any railroad 100 years ago was seen as a pretty good job. The unions were in full swing, so you as a worker would get good benefits and a good pension. But besides benefits, just your paycheck alone would be enough to get you to come work here. In 1923, a blacksmith helper at the bottom of the ladder would be earning what would be today $17 an hour. At the same time, a journeyman level machinist would be earning what would be today $150,000 a year. Now, with an increase in employees at the time, there was also an increase in workplace injuries. And in response, the Central of Georgia decided they were going to build their own hospital to take care of this issue. By 1927, at 3032 Bull Street in this city, the Central of Georgia built a state-of-the-art 80-bed hospital to take care of any injuries that happened on site. And in cooperation with some of the earliest unions in the city, the Central of Georgia also built a retirement home for their employees. And that building still exists. It now serves as the admissions building for the Oakland Island Wildlife Center on the way towards Tybee Island. Have our paint shop on our right, and this was one of the busiest buildings on site. Its 50,000 square foot work floor can hold 32 train cars at all times. And today the building is home to most of our projects, including 2 Australian trolleys, 9 train cars, a 1937 Model 15 Burrow railroad crane, and 2 vintage cars, a 1926 Ford Model T and 1929 Ford Model A that our on-site mechanic maintains and runs for us here in the museum. Ago, there'd be dozens of workers painting and stripping paint on countless train cars, entering and exiting the building at all hours. They would use air-powered spray guns to put the paint on the cars and use acetylene blowtorches to burn the paint off. And all of this was half of the activity going on in the building, because there was even more work going on below us down in the basement. The basement is just about as big as this room. And down there, workers would test diesel engine blocks, make and mix paint in the chemistry lab, print out paperwork and pamphlets for the site in the print shop, and repair upholstery and electronics in the workers' space. This site could basically sustain itself throughout its operating hours, and it was the largest rail repair yard in the city. On top of the company's own train cars, it wasn't an uncommon occurrence for other railroad companies to send their cars not to the city rail yard, but here to their rival shop for service. And we still use this building nowadays. In fact, on this side of the room, there's two big projects going on, and one of them is this red train car on my left. This is one of our oldest cars, dating back to the year 1911. It was built in the city of Augusta for Georgia Central Railroad, which was a contemporary of the Central of Georgia Railroad that used this place. This car's number is 67, and you may have actually seen this car before on TV and not known it, because it showed up in a Disney movie a few years ago. If you've seen the live-action remake of Lady and the Tramp that came out in 2019, when Disney was choosing a place to film the movie, they ended up choosing Savannah. And in the scene when the tramp first shows up, you see him sitting in his train car. He runs through our rail yard and runs by not actors, but members of our railroad operations crew that Disney hired to act like they're fixing and driving the trains that they actually fix and drive for a living. But as impressive as that car is, it's not our oldest. Our oldest is this one, right behind us. This is the number 2. And unfortunately, this car is largely a mystery to us because there's not a lot written down about it. We don't even know the year it was built in. We just know, based on the parts, it was built sometime between 1878 and 1884. We don't even know where it was built. We know it was built somewhere in Georgia, and we think it was built here, but we just can't say for certain. Now here's everything we do know about it. It was originally a passenger car, and then it was turned into an office car and was used by a railroad superintendent at sites where train tracks needed repair. Then in 1904, it was sent to Macon, Georgia, where it was reconstructed and had brand new siding put on it. And the reason we know that is because the man that did the job left a message carved into the train saying that he had done it. And then in the 1950s, the car's brakes were checked. That's about all we know. But alongside that car and our turntable, there's one more record we have. We are the largest, most complete collection of antebellum railroad buildings in the country. And if we're being completely honest, it is a genuine miracle that this place is still here after all this time. From breaking ground to now, this place has been here in various forms for almost 200 years. For something to be around for that long, it's had to almost be destroyed at least once or twice. And the first time that happened was in the Civil War. Now, Georgia's main event that happened in the Civil War was General Sherman's March. After Sherman's army took Atlanta in October of 1864, his next mission was to cross Georgia and take the city of Savannah. Along the way, General Sherman was going to make sure that the Confederate war effort in Georgia was completely eliminated. So as they marched, his 63,000 soldiers would take Confederate supplies, blow up trains, and rip railroad tracks out of the ground and twist them around trees. A railroad network that took 10 years to build, General Sherman's men destroyed it in 5 weeks. And surprisingly, this site avoided all damage in the war, and we have no idea why. But then, 100 years later, the site was almost gone for good. What destroyed the railroad system in this country wasn't a war. It was a mixture of government corruption and the introduction of our highway system in the 1950s. With the introduction of these massive roads, more people began to drive cars. And the automotive industry, with some financial incentives, suggested that Congress put more funding into the highway. So, the congressman at the time took some money out of the railroad budget and quietly snuck it into the money meant for the highway. Because of this, many small railroads went underfunded at the time, and in 1963, the Central of Georgia went out of business. But then, all of the Central's properties were acquired by their rival, Southern Railroad. And after 3 years of doing nothing with this place, Southern Rail decided that this place would be better off as salvage, and they began to tear the place apart. Thankfully, Southern Rail wasn't very subtle in their demolition, and people began to notice what was happening and raise the alarm about it. The demolition officially ended in 1972, when the city found the original 1833 contract that gave the land to the Central of Georgia. In that contract, it says that if the land isn't being used as an active rail yard, the ownership of the land goes right back to the city. Then in 1976, the U.S. government stepped in and named this place a National Historic Landmark under the protection of the National Park Service. And Now, even though this place is not part of the national parks, it receives the same levels of protection as places like Yellowstone and Arcadia, as well as monuments like the Statue of Liberty. Even with all this protection, however, the problems weren't over. Savannah had no idea what to do with this place now that they had it back. And until they figured out their plan, they weren't going to put a finger on this place. So for another 13 years, this place remained abandoned. And due to the ravages of time and frequent summer hurricanes, the buildings began to fall apart. But this place still found its uses. In the 70s and 80s, local Savannians would break in here at night and throw parties that are now the stuff of legend here in the city. And then after 13 years of neglect by day and party by night, in 1986, the site was saved for good when a film arrived in town. The Civil War film Glory, starring Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, and Matthew Broderick, decided that this abandoned rail yard would be perfect for the first two-thirds of the movie when the soldiers are training. And after that film was released in theaters, it was winning all sorts of Academy Awards that drew a lot of attention to the facility. And because of this, the city then turned to our historical society in 1989 and asked us if we would like to watch over this place. And what you see around you now is 37 years of our nonprofit organization's management and care, keeping it here so that you can come here every day and learn the history of a place that wasn't just a major center of the city's economy, but also a major center of its communities as well. Now, before the ride ends, there's one last thing to talk about, and it's where we're going to next. Ahead of us at the end of the line, there used to be a bridge that linked this rail site to the train tracks across the street. Unfortunately, in the early 1970s, the bridge had to be destroyed because too many 18-wheelers kept getting stuck underneath it. Now today, Savannah is the second biggest port on the East Coast. We're second only to New York City. And before Highway 16 was finished, the main road out of our port for those supply trucks was down Louisville Road and under a bridge 40 years older than the first car. For those trucks to get under the bridge, the drivers would have to stop right in front of it, get out, deflate every single tire, and then reinflate them all on the other side, usually without an automatic air pump. You can imagine this would be frustrating. And if there is one thing a port city doesn't want, it's frustrated truck drivers. Especially in the 1960s and 70s when the International Brotherhood of Teamsters was led by Jimmy Hoffa. Now, Jimmy Hoffa, by reputation, was a dangerous and well-connected man with alleged connections to the Italian mafia. Now, coincidentally, for decades, Savannah was a favorite vacation spot and place of business for known members of the Chicago outfit, including Scarface himself, Al Capone, during Prohibition. So, a few years before this place became an untouchable government landmark, when those truck drivers very nicely asked the city for help with their little bridge problem, or else it would be an awful shame if something were to happen one day, the city realized what they meant and very quickly got rid of the bridge for them. And because of that, we are completely locked into this site, and the only way a train can get in or out of it now is in pieces being carried by 18-wheeler trucks. And if that's not irony, I don't know what is. But irony knows no bounds, because with the bridge's destruction, the problem didn't go away. Trucks just found other bridges to get stuck under. Particularly that one, down on the intersection in front of us. That bridge was also built in the 1850s, and that one, with the city's protection today, has flashing lights and signs warning truck drivers that that tunnel is about 18 inches too short. Despite all of that, there are scratches in that tunnel that were made 3 months ago. And I know that because I was stuck behind that one that morning and it made me late for work. First time I saw it happen though, I was on this train giving a tour, and as I was talking about the scratches in the tunnel and where they come from, we got a live demonstration as a truck appeared out of nowhere and got stuck in the tunnel right in front of us. Thankfully nobody got hurt, but if I'm being honest, I couldn't have planned it any better for my tour even if I wanted to. Now, as as we're backing up towards the platform, I'd like to ask everyone to please remain seated until you hear the train's horn sound off one time. That'll be our sign that we've come to a stop, and you will then be free to get up and disembark. And with all that said, thank you very much for joining us here on this ride. And we at the museum would like to thank you personally for your patronage, helping us out with this 37-year-old non-profit project of education, maintenance, and preservation. And as we make our final approach, thank you once again for joining us here at the Georgia State Railroad Museum.